Today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of November 16, 2024. A significant number of events have occurred today, so let's get started. We'll begin with an overview of the situation along the entire combat line. To summarize briefly, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have launched a large-scale offensive across the entire front line, from the Kyiv direction to, surprisingly, the Chernihiv direction. Yes, the Chernihiv direction. Let's start with this section of the front. In the northern sector, specifically in the northern part of Ukraine, several videos of artillery strikes and rocket salvos along the border with Ukraine have been released over the past 24 hours. The footage shared by pro-Russian sources depicts routine artillery operations in coordination with reconnaissance drones. While these seem like ordinary videos that don't indicate any dramatic changes on the ground, later in the day, pro-Russian sources began releasing numerous videos from the northeastern part of the Chernihiv region. Here's the context. The border of the Chernihiv region begins a few kilometers west of the village of Novovasilivka in the Sumy region. Several videos were shared from this area, showing what appears to be the activity of an irregular unit of the Russian armed forces, specifically a lone sabotage and reconnaissance group, SRG, that approached a bridge southwest of Novovasilivka. At this spot, Russian soldiers raised a flag in the northeastern part of the Chernihiv region. This event quickly became a topic of discussion among pro-Ukrainian sources, which dismissed it as a mere operation by a Russian SRG rather than a regular military incursion. By the end of November 15th, Ukrainian defenders, including border guards, had re-entered this area, cleared it of the Russian SRG, and restored control over the northwestern part of the Chernihiv region. However, additional footage later surfaced, this time from areas near the villages of Kolos and Moravyi. These videos depicted abandoned buildings, possibly a library, local council office, or administrative building, overgrown with vegetation and apparently unused since 2022. A Russian flag was also raised over one of these buildings. To summarize, it appears that the Russian forces operating in this part of the Chernihiv region are irregular units. It is not ruled out that regular Russian forces are stationed in the Bryansk region, ready to move into Chernihiv if necessary. However, these flag-raising actions seem more like a publicity stunt aimed at sending a message to Ukraine's leadership. The intended message is clear. Over the past days, November 13th to 15th, Russian forces have advanced across multiple fronts, meeting little resistance. For example, in the northern part of Kupiansk, Russian forces have established firm control, as evidenced by videos showing not just SRGs or partisan activity, but full-scale convoys of military vehicles entering the town unopposed. This action in Chernihiv serves as a signal to Ukraine's President Zelensky. The implication is that if Ukraine struggles to defend critical areas like Kupiansk or Kyiv, what will happen if Russia begins a full-scale advance from Bryansk toward Chernihiv, potentially pushing further toward Konotop or even Kyiv? At present, Ukrainian forces seem incapable of resisting such an advance. These flag-raising incidents are a deliberate political signal, emphasizing the vulnerability of northern Ukraine and the consequences of Russian troop movements beyond minor SRG activity. Now, shifting to the south, let's discuss the Zaporizhzhia front. As mentioned earlier, the Russian armed forces have initiated a large-scale offensive stretching from Kyiv to the Chernihiv region. Some mapping services indicate significant advances by Russian troops from the village of Robotyne toward Kyiv and Novodanilivka. By November 14th to 15th, Russian units had approached Novodanilivka, leaving less than 3 kilometers between their positions and the N08 highway. Heavy pressure continues, suggesting that the Russian military does not plan to stop. While the exact objectives of this offensive are unclear, they might include capturing Kyiv and Huliai-Pol, or tying down Ukrainian reserves to prevent their deployment elsewhere, such as Kurakov, Kupiansk, Toretsk, or other key areas. Apparently, this task is being carried out quite effectively. A similar situation is reported from the settlement of Huliai-Pol. Here, too, there have been updates to the maps provided by neutral cartographic services. By the end of November 14th and into November 15th, minor advances were noted, along with footage of Russian FPV drones striking forward positions and equipment of the Ukrainian army. Aside from the general advances near Kyiv and Pole, it's worth recalling that just a few days ago, on November 11, 2024, Russia's Minister of Defense, Belov, visited the Dnipro and Kherson regions. This visit was essentially an inspection of the Dnipro group of troops, their readiness and operational capabilities. This very grouping, inspected on November 11th, is responsible for conducting offensive operations toward both Kyiv and Pole. Historically, following such inspections by either the current defense minister or his predecessor Shoigu, large-scale offensives have typically begun within days. This instance appears to follow the same pattern. Next, we move to the Velika Novosilka direction, where Russian forces continue advancing from Pryutny toward the T-0510 highway. Over the past 24 hours, Russian troops have managed to expand their zone of control by a few kilometers, coming closer to the highway. This progress has been confirmed both by neutral cartographic sources and through footage of objective control. In the area near Rivnopil, Ukrainian sources have shared videos showing drone strikes on forward positions and equipment of Russian units conducting offensive operations northward from Rivnopil toward Novosilka. As of now, there's no confirmed information about combat near Zelenopole or Novodarivka. However, some experts have already marked Novodarivka as under full Russian control. Let's review how the situation in this direction has developed. Significant changes to the front line began appearing as early as November 10th. On November 11th, reports came in about the clearing of Makarivka. By November 12th, Russian forces launched pincer attacks toward Novodarivka and Rivnopil. By November 13th, the first objective control footage confirmed these advances. On November 14th, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported minor progress northward and the beginning of combat near Zelenopole. On November 15th, additional minor advances were reported northward toward the T-0510 highway. Now we turn to the southern Donetsk direction, where some of the most intense and possibly bloodiest battles are taking place. Russian units are clashing with Ukraine's 72nd and 33rd Mechanized Brigades near Uspanivka. This network of strongholds has effectively been turned into an artillery pocket, or encirclement to the southeast. At present, withdrawing from Uspanivka seems impossible without incurring additional losses. The distance between Russia's forward positions southwest of Uspanivka and the southeastern edge of the village of Dalnya now stands at less than 6.5 kilometers, roughly 3 kilometers in each direction. Anything within this area is exposed to strikes from FPV drones. However, what hasn't been observed yet on this front are thermobaric systems like TOS-1A Solntsepyok. When these systems reach the Suki Yali River, there will likely be nothing left to evacuate. Until then, evacuation remains possible, but it's expected that thermobaric weapons may arrive within the next day or two. Once they do, Ukrainian forces may retreat slightly to the northwest, which would automatically straighten the front line. Afterward, some time will be required for clearing operations, but this would likely take only a day or two. Reports indicate that Ukrainian forces have already begun evacuations in this area, with some sources even describing it as a rout. This is corroborated by data from certain neutral cartographic services. We saw a similar map yesterday by the end of November 14th and into November 15th. The entire village of Dalnya came under the control of Russian units, as did the former Ukrainian Armed Forces UAF positions in the fields between Ilinka and Dalnya. Regarding Antonivka, yesterday objective control footage was released showing Russian forces raising a flag on the northwesternmost part of the village. A large amount of footage documents the clearing of this village. Based on this evidence, most cartographers marked the extreme point of Antonivka as under Russian control. However, the situation around the company-level stronghold located between Ilinka and Antonivka remains unclear. Some sources claim this position has also been captured by Russian forces, while others state that UAF still holds it. This stronghold is critically important, as it serves as a key defensive and logistical node for facilitating safe withdrawal and evacuation from the surrounding fields, those between Pobeda, Antonivka, and Dalnya. Next, we move to the village of Suki Yali, where significant progress by Russian forces has been noted. This is confirmed by data from both neutral and pro-Russian cartographers. The primary goal for Russian command in this area is to reach a minimal distance to Suki Yali. If this village and its associated roads are physically cut off, Ukrainian forces in several pockets to the northwest, northeast, and east of the village may face encirclement. If Russian units reach these tree lines and strongholds, they will gain complete control over Kurakhove. Even during a tactical retreat, UAF will likely suffer losses of 20 to 30% among those attempting or allowed to withdraw. Regarding Kurakhove itself, Russian forces are gradually flanking the village. According to some neutral cartographers, over the past 24 hours, the map has shown the situation evolving in the following way. Russian aviation regularly targets Kurakhove, employing FAB 1,500 and FAB 500 bombs. So far, FAB 3000s have not been recorded, but the smaller bombs are reportedly achieving their objectives. The UAF still holds its defenses here, but it's hard to predict how long they can maintain their positions. In the immediate term, 2 to 4 days, the defenses are expected to hold, but predictions for the next week and a half are uncertain. To the north of Kurakhove, reports indicate further Russian advances from Ilinka toward Berestki. Assault operations and battles near the railway line are ongoing. This information is supported by sources, including the pro-Ukrainian cartographic service, Deep State. Some cartographers report only minor advances for now, but even if initial reports were slightly ahead of reality, combat is likely now taking place in the village itself. Objective control footage is expected to surface soon. Next, we move to the Selidov direction, where Russian forces continue their offensive westward. Objective control footage from Ukrainian forces shows numerous strikes on Russian assault troops near tree lines between Novoleksivka and Yurivka. Based on geolocated footage of these strikes, the map was updated accordingly. By November 14th and into November 15th, Yurivka and the tree lines west of Novoleksivka were marked under Russian control. Today, neutral cartographers have also reported that Russian forces have taken full control of Petrikivka and Hryhorivka. Based on this information, contested territories were updated on the map pending further objective control footage. Moving to the Toretsk direction, after a prolonged pause, combat operations have resumed. Today the map was updated again in favor of the UAF in the Zabalka district. Russian sources released extensive footage showing FPV drone strikes on UAF positions. Based on this evidence, updates were made favoring the UAF. Previously considered contested, these areas are now marked as fully under UAF control after verified objective control footage was received. Simultaneously, the Russian army has established full fire control over the main supply routes from Kostiantynivka to Toretsk. As a result, Toretsk may soon fall entirely under Russian control. Finally, we turn to the north, in the Siversk direction. Today, some cartographic services noted Russian advances from Rozdolivka toward Fedorivka. Russian units have reportedly crossed the Bakhmutka River, secured a tree line, and reached the outskirts of Fedorivka.